Isn't it? Okay. All right, good evening. I'll call the meeting to order in roll call, please.
Trustee Guardian.
Present.
Trustee Olet.
Here.
Trustee McCall.
Here.
Trustee Sell.
Here.
Trustee Chadwick.
Here.
President Birmingham.
Here. Thank you very much. All right. With that, we have one old business item on our schedule tonight. It's number DOT 21-024, or 04, I'm sorry. Discussion necessary action to the hiring of economic development consultant, Manager Michaels.
Thank you. We had began our discussion, for the record, with that you wanted me to bring in after we had a discussion about the development consultant. You asked that I bring her in and have her come in. So it's Stephanie Hacker from Grave. You just want her to answer questions or present maybe? I'm sorry.
Has everybody looked at the package right that you got?
Yeah.
So, let's come up and introduce yourself, and
Okay, so in the.
Yeah, you can take
you can take your mask off.
Take your mask
It's
off.
much
Yeah.
easier.
Well, if you're comfortable, but then you can see my facial expressions.
Yeah, legally when you're, that's okay. When you're public speaking, you
When you're
can take it off.
speaking, that makes it easier.
I would so prefer that to try and brand the great name over my mask anyway, so I think what's important to start with tonight is, the understanding that you have called me in this week, and that it's a perfect way to test drive me as supporting you, because I've had maybe 24 hours to prepare for a conversation. And often in economic development, as you know, that's exactly the amount of time you get, sometimes less, to dive into a conversation where you need to make decisions and make deals. So that said, I'm looking forward to answering any questions you have, taking turns to talk about different areas of this conversation. But I'll at least start there and then say that some of the best mentors I've had in this realm have said we need a blend of audacity and humility. But my job to you tonight, so you get to know me, is to convey more of the audacity than the humility. But in conversations with prospective tenants, prospective businesses, existing business owners and representatives, you need me to convey a good amount of humility as well. So you won't see that part tonight, but know that it's there, because having a big pair of listening ears is really critical in this work. Over the last 15 years, I've practiced in southeastern Wisconsin and still have a lot of ground to cover, and yet have come to know a good amount of those who are working in the area and who are passionate about and what they hope to achieve. And so when I think about what's happening in Greendale right now, which is not just Southbridge, right? There's a whole community of economic activity to cover, but particularly in Southbridge. I think about that network, what they're talking about, and what they'd like to see happen in the region, and I feel like there's so many pieces for us to connect. And I have so we have the short term to think about, we have the midterm to think about, and we have the long term to think about. And so what I appreciate about my planning training is that it helps with the middle and long term. So we can be working on talking about vacancies to occupancies and fill the short term, but we can also be talking about how we can forecast and do due diligence and assemble properties, where to have the village involved, where to not have the village involved, but maybe just play a participatory role for the long term, so that we can look to the future with economic strength. So that's where I'll pause, and we can get into specifics so that I can hear from you what you're concerned about, what you have questions about, and then we can go from there. So I'll turn it back to you, maybe to take that off, or to President Birmingham. So wherever you like.
Very good. So I'll open it up to the board. That's why don't we start with Sally? Go ahead, please.
Okay, hi. I noticed in your listing of
Pull the mic towards you, so nobody
Yeah,
can hear you.
get the mic close to you guys tonight. When I noticed when I was on the other night, the further away you are, the
You have to, we have to.
right, yeah, right up to you like here. See where I am?
new to this, sorry about that. I noticed in your listings and everything that the different groups and organizations that you plan to talk to. Could you give me an idea of what you expect to hear from them, or what you're expecting to gather or learn from them?
Sure. Well, as an example, that list is to convey, there are,
Stephanie, can you pull your mic too?
Just pull your mic in towards you. You can, it's movable.
You'll know if you hear this.
Yeah,
is this
there you go.
okay? Does that work? Okay, all right. So there are full like to change. Sometimes it's a new set of roles and responsibilities that are really critical and need to be covered. And so what I would expect in having those conversations with those organizations is, how are you involved in Greendale's affairs with economic development today? And let's talk about if that's because it's just kind of been waiting to be picked up, or because it's really been a proactive set of roles and responsibilities. And if there's a gap, then we need to come back from those conversations, and I need to say, okay, there are ways to fill the gap. There are ways to encourage a group to be more proactive or more involved in a different realm than they've been practicing. So my intent was to say, it's really important to be talking to all of those organizations, and it's not an exhaustive list. There are likely others, and there are substitutes, but we need to be reaching out at first and say, okay, I'm playing a role, there's a team of people playing a role as your economic development consultant at the village. Let's figure out where we can be most relevant in the work that you're doing right now. Does that answer your question?
It does. Also, I noticed that a lot of the stuff that you are going to be covering you're gathering from information that's already present, or that was already developed, like a comprehensive plan. It's already in place, so like that. I didn't see a lot of new ideas or what you expect to bring. And I think for me, okay, knowing that the condition of Southridge, okay, I know how bad it is and things, and I know it has to change. I don't have a problem, I do not have an issue with changing it, okay? But I find a lack of, what do you change it from where it's dying
Yes. I'd be
to
happy
something
speak to that,
vibrant?
if I may.
Before you say that,
Yes.
I wouldn't say the mall's dying.
No.
I mean, we've got one acre store that's empty, basically. The other issue is, we don't control what Penny's wants to do. We don't control what Macy's wants to do. We don't control what the bank wants to do when we do get control of the mall. I'll say it publicly, I would rather see an opportunity to do some kind of major redevelopment. That's not the direction bank's going.
And then
I can't do anything about it.
I have to agree with what Todd's saying, is that I don't think the mall as a whole is dying. I think malls are nationally. But I don't think our mall is really on that whole. It's just that it will be if we don't move to the next line. We don't see where we want to take Greendale. Is this where Greendale goes with this? So I understand where you come from, Sally, but
There is a conflict here. Todd says it's a private industry, and it is. But here she is, and we're trying to encourage, and we want to do something because we know Southridge needs to be more vibrant.
But people that are in development, as she is, they know how to work with the landowners. They know how to work with those bodies of people who are also looking for the best in what they have. And I think that's what they would bring us, is that they would give us animal, some idea. But as she said, and I'm really impressed that she said that first, Greendale is not just a mall. Greendale has a lot going on around it, and that's where we need to start. With that, I'm gonna move to, go ahead.
I was just adjusting my shirt, but I do have a question. Do you want to answer Sally's question?
Well, I wanted to, so back on.
Yeah.
So thank you. But the example, Sally, of something I know that's important to you, which is history of Greendale, and then using that, or enjoying that as a baseline to develop economic culture and activity, it's an example that I can bring to the table tonight from other work. So if you were to look up the New Cyrus Club redevelopment in South Milwaukee, I don't know if you come upon it, but in my most recent efforts, and now public, it takes some time for economic development efforts to be public, the city has stepped in for a catalytic redevelopment to say, this is how we want to spark activity in our downtown. And so utilizing the heritage of Cyrus and also a heritage building, they are renovating, the city owns it right now and is renovating it right now. It's about a $5 million project into a museum for South Milwaukee Industrial Museum, mostly for Cyrus, and also an entertainment area. And so you've asked about the vision. What you didn't see in the proposal is a vision of Southbridge or the future of Southbridge. And the reason that's not there is really important because even though my team and I have a decent understanding of retail from prior work, we need to be able to connect current desires and requests and needs from the community with the heritage of the community and then the future potential and put that all together into a deal that can really change a place for the better. And so you don't want me to walk in and say, here's the future of Southbridge. Even though as a planner, I'd be happy to do that. I can keep you all night long and say, let's vision. It's really key that that be married with some historic thoughts and values and also current community needs and desires. And so we will be listening and spending a little time while we're trying to push things forward in the short term to make that vision actually come together and marry those elements. So that answers your question. But that's why we didn't put a vision in our proposal.
I think, if the board is okay with, why don't we kind of go around and, everybody, is that without everybody? Ron, why don't you start with just kind of.
One of the things that I went, kind of what you said when you started out, when I'm talking development, not just Salisbury, we've got across the street, we've got something in Industrial Park, our downtown, and that, so I'm glad you mentioned that. But what prompted me mostly to be interested in pursuing this was that some of our surrounding communities have been gaining, businesses have been looking to come here, originally like Five Guys and Pizza Place, a couple of other ones, and now suddenly they go somewhere else. And I don't understand why at all, you know, they don't even come to us to have a shot at them. They just leave and go some to our neighborhood communities. And so I'm looking to somebody to try to find out what's going on and see if we can bring them back. Because we do have space here. I mean, if you look across the street, it's kind of run down, but you know, we have a lot of open spaces there. That owner doesn't seem to be doing anything, not even painting it. And I'd just like to know what their thoughts are. So that's what you're talking about, to talk with these people and find out. And do you have contacts in other communities as to, I know it'll be hard for them to tell you, but to find out why people aren't looking here?
So there are a couple of questions and then a couple of answers, so I'll try to answer them all. First,
That's fine.
so looking back at the beginning of what you said, if I'm a Five Guys representative, who do I call for the village? I look at the village website or I look at the retail chamber, who do I call first? And Todd can cover the basis and then some because he understands the village, but is it a manager or administrator's responsibility in the municipality to be the salesperson? No. Now circumstantially, if it's not Greendale's fault or anyone else's fault in this region that municipalities lack that presence, for whatever reason, the Milwaukee region is really light on in-house planning and economic development teams. The reason why West Dallas often gets a lot of credit right now for good work is they have a full-blown development department in the city, right? So it's really hard for a Five Guys rep or somebody else to just figure out, am I calling the manager first, right? Because they're supposed to run the village. So you had a designated person and contact for economic development, and they at least start with one first call and then one over. So then from there, I want to make sure I hit any questions you had, but I'm afraid that if I just connect to them now, I may lose the nuance. So was there something else in your latter part that I missed?
Well, it just seems that, kind of what you said, I mean, maybe they know where to contact here, but they must be able to get a contact at Greenfield and Franklin and Oak Creek. I mean, I'm looking for what is our disconnect for just different things that happen. And I don't know. I mean, I have no idea, but I think, to me, we've had a couple of really good leads to the last 2 or 3 years, and they just seem to always evaporate, and we don't, or at least I don't understand why. Because I think we're very desirable. I know for a fact that we're much better than Franklin, Oak Creek, and Greenfield, and I'm not partial at all. I'm being honest. Okay, so.
Good, and we.
I can't tell you in reference to Five Guys. Simon was pitching the redevelopment of the Boston Store property. It fell apart. Like they announced this Greenfield Crossings. there's nothing there except they have the land right now. Now they're running around trying to get tenants. You
Who's
know,
running around to get the tenants, so, somebody from.
the owner, property owner, Cobalt Properties. But, also I tried to get some of the economic development directors, they're kind of biased, tried to get Greenfields, couldn't get it. You know, Old Creek has a guy who's been there for 31 years. Franklin, you know, who's successful mainly because they have the property. And their person is, in my opinion, the least experienced, and has a kind of a eclectic resume.
Where's that?
City of Franklin's economic development director. She was,
Just wrote this off somewhere. But again, it wasn't there.
she came from,
You got some stuff.
the Bridgman Area Chamber and Growth Alliance, which is between Benton Harbor and Michigan City, Indiana. It's nowhere. And she ran like a consulting company, so I was kind of surprised when I saw the bio.
Just to go to Ron's question, it's one that this board, I think, is, I've been on here 24 years, and we've gone over and over and over our line, and I'm convinced many times is that we really don't not offer what everybody does. It just might be where we are, what we're about. Greendale is on a very busy road. It goes into Greenfield, goes into Greendale, goes into Franklin. Actually, it goes up to Oak Creek if you go to that. So it's one of those roads that touches every community. And they all have the same as we do. I always say Greendale has one thing that everybody else doesn't, is we don't have a lot of property open. We have them all. And then all a lot of houses. And when you look at Oak Creek, what's going on, development is going crazy because there's property all over. Franklin or Greenfield's finding all this property along next to the expressway. Of course, they're gonna jump on all of that. And I think Franklin has done the same with the rock and what's going on. And Greendale we have that corridor of what's happening at Southridge, and little cuts and squares out in other places. So to me, a lot of times is I don't think we're not doing right. I just think we're probably one of those over the years that really should be at the point where we are now. Something I've always not been for doing, and that's getting the developer to help us look at this whole program. Because of course, when you're in a small board like Greendale, we always have the best ideas for our residents. And, you know, maybe time to maybe look and see if that's really where we're going. So that's, go ahead, Donna, would you? Sorry.
So that is what, I mean, everything you said so far sounds really great. And the whole thing, like Jim is saying, we don't have a lot of spaces. I think we could have a lot of spaces, you know, I just feel like we need to let the community know that we are open for business. You know, Greendale is here, and we do want to support businesses, and we want businesses to come here. I think we could do more businesses up on this road. There was some lots we talked in the past that we could, you know, develop. All around Southbridge, the outlets, you know, I think there's huge development we could do there. We don't have anybody to help us do it. And there could be things out there that we just don't know what we don't know. You know, like even Martin Luther, you know, that whole thing there, you know, it's like, that's what really got me going to want to get someone here, because Illuminati is now in Greenfield in this little space where they could have been right below there. It's like, so they obviously didn't know that if it was open, number one, or there was a spot in Greendale to be filled. You know, even Greenfield Center, we have spaces that don't be built.
they already have a pizza place,
No,
for
that's
Martin Luther. The ovens are actually in the basement, I was told by our building inspector. It's,
just now.
it's Steve Anderson, no, it's been for months.
Let's,
It's Steve Anderson's doing, I want to say it's brick oven
Red
pizza,
brick pizza.
red brick pizza. Did one in Bayview, he's got to do like
Yes.
5.
Oh, that's
So
awesome.
nowadays,
Great.
something
I mean, okay,
quick
that's
one.
fabulous, okay.
Did you want to add something before you?
So that's I just am very excited that you're here, and I would love to hear more of what you have planned. And I do really agree with, you know, having to go into the chamber and all the different groups and just see, connect with people too, so.
Jason, please.
So two things. One, we lost Starbucks which really stinks. I'm not sure, do we even know why that ever happened?
There was another,
I think it was COVID.
Okay.
It just put,
Just close it.
put clamps on a bunch of projects.
So, I mean, they own that, don't they?
No,
Oh, they don't, they were gonna lease it from somebody? Got it, okay.
I don't think that deal ever, the property deal ever closed.
Okay. The entertainment, district that you were talking about in South Milwaukee, is that just like a bunch of restaurants and bars in the area?
And trying to figure out, well, what's the best way to respect you as you're talking, like we're close to 6 feet. So if this is okay with you. But so the Bucyrus Club is a single building, and it's adjacent to, it's basically an extension of the downtown Main Street. So it's a Main Street style environment, more like Broad Street, but with a heritage building where they used to assemble parts of the steam shovels that left the Panama Canal. And it was for sale by a private owner after having been living a dull life with water damage from the lack of maintenance from the furnace. But all that said, so the idea was the city needed to find a way to step in without dominating the market, without driving all of the private investment, but to be part of it, to show that they've skin in the game. And so that building the city purchased, we went through first a quiet, anonymous buyer process, and then ultimately it came to be more public. And so the city is redeveloping it for the museum and an entertainment venue. Skyline Catering is the company that will do the Friday Night Fish Fries and will do any other catering and entertainment. The museum is there as a resource to be a part of that entertainment experience. And Skyline is owned and operated by a couple that lives in South Milwaukee and have been doing business in Cudahy. And so it's just a matter of putting all these pieces together, right? But that said, Greendale has the same rich heritage, and there's so much that can continue to happen, even in a fully built community like Greendale, whether it's on Broad Street or it's at Southbridge. But there are ways that I look forward to putting the pieces together between history, current desires, small business owners who want to make sure that they're living and doing business in Greendale, like I understand, right? Yeah, and continue to do so and help lift up the Southbridge area by being part of that.
So the reason I asked about the like restaurant entertainment thing is because I love the food spread in that whole funds.
Yeah.
And I just have always was like, why doesn't that happen here?
Yeah.
And there's every person I talk to, there's like a shortage of restaurants. And
they just went over here.
I would love to see the same thing, but it would be way awesome. I
So
possibly
moved.
would.
Yeah, thank you.
Just ask a real quick question. Does that, and I also looked about the cybersecurity, it looks like you did some grant work too. So were you able to get the grants for them?
Yes. So
That's like,
WECCDI was announced this week. That's open to many communities who want to either have job growth or promote a catalytic downtown investment. So CDI is typically more for a Broad Street area than it would be for a Southbridge or an industrial park, but it doesn't, there are all kinds of ways that the policies change on a frequent basis. So that said,
we don't even know that.
yeah, the grants change, the grant program guidelines change, so that might be a little different in the future. But then $2 million grant, $1.5 million of which was for the Bucyrus Club, came from the Bucyrus Foundation after recognizing that they had long been asked by multiple people and parties in the region to invest in their projects. But South Milwaukee just hadn't been at the table to ask for the things that they thought would help lift up the heritage. And so Greendale has heritage investors too. And I won't speak for anyone, but there are a lot of conversations that could probably be bridged by the village advancing its economic development focus and heritage investors and those who want to continue to invest in Greendale. So there may be some similarities or parallels from that example to here. So yes, grant writing is, and also presenting is part of a passion as well as that.
Nope, good.
That's, please.
Thanks for coming. So to Ron's point, why are people not coming here? I think you had a good point. If I'm Joe Blow, who do I call? So having a dedicated person that's very easily identifiable is great. I also think that people don't know that we're here. Some people don't know we're here. I was with a business owner from Milwaukee last Friday. He never had to go out on green for the whole night. He never knew green this existed. He had driven by on this road, didn't know. He knew Southbridge. He didn't know Southbridge was even in green. And he didn't know downtown existed. So we need to get out there more, I feel like. And I'm sorry, this is more of a speech than a question. But also, I guess what I want in our economic consultant, director consultant, is someone that's gonna proactively tell people we're here. You know, I talked to, several developers, and like Oak Creek, for example, that whole Drexel Town Square thing, the mayor reached out to, one of the developers there, said, hey, we want you to come here and do something. And they did, and they're continuing to do things. You guys know on radio, it's getting closer.
Yeah.
And then I was with another developer recently in the city of Brown Deer. I'm not sure which person in their city just called and said, hey, we want you to come here. Okay. Called and said, hey, we want you to come here and put a project together. And we're pretty close to getting it done. So I guess my question would be, you know, is that something you think that you would do, is proactively reach out to folks? Okay. Versus just waiting for them to come and say, oh, so next one is good. And then I was gonna ask, you know, like some names of who you think you might call, but in a public setting, I don't think that's really appropriate, so I won't do that today.
Yeah, please.
Can I get a question off of him? How do you do that?
How do you respond?
Yes, how do you do that? How do you get to those people?
Well,
I'm gonna feed off of his.
Sure, sure. So, well, first, there's a baseline network, right? And in this region, we all have overlaps in that network. So first, there's a common ground right here, and we all overlap with retail activity, right? You're sitting on the board and leading that charge. So.
Can I stop you right there? So how do you do that without, excuse the language, pissing off somebody else that's like trying to get, let's just use 5 guys. Trying to get 5 guys in Greenfield and all of a sudden, or trying to get 5 guys, say, in Greenfield, and then all of a sudden, you're representing Greendale as you would be, and saying, hey, we can offer this. In a common, is there a common, like, ground there, like you don't step on other people, or is it you just go for each other, do it?
Your peers to your right might be one way too, because I think you're part of the affiliation, and part of it is a great example of the network that I was gonna mention where you know your space, you know who you're representing or what you're representing, and if you connect with others and you talk about those things, and if something's for some reason off the table, you know right away it's off the table, right? But there's very little that I've encountered in a NAP, Wisconsin, RW, you know, chamber, economic development professional network in this region, where like there's been control setting. Everybody kind of understands that, you know, if you're wearing the hat of representing Greendale and maybe one of the community, you're always gonna bring those ideas to the table, right? So it's, for me, it's a comfort to be able to even pick up a cold call for somebody at 5 Guys and say, you know, here I am representing and collaborating with the village of Greendale to support economic development, and I want to talk to you about your recent experiences. So let's have a conversation, and then maybe that will lead to some opportunities, you know, to come here. And I don't want to overuse that example. It was just starting that early on.
So in the network, say there's somebody that's working with a company or a business that is trying to get into the south side of Milwaukee or this area, but it just doesn't work for that community with this network. Do they reach out to you and say, hey, I have this business that might work for you?
Oh, sure.
Okay.
And specifically, you're asking for me to play a role of the municipality's economic development consultant. And so when you look at that role and compare it to other economic development roles from municipalities, there is a desire from those professionals to continue to connect. And Aaron Grossberg, who's now the county, has said, got a lot on my plate, but I want to continue to lead Milwaukee County economic development professionals, those working with and in municipalities, and talk about opportunities, RFPs. And so from my time in South Milwaukee, when I served as a director, as a department head level position, there were all of the in-house staff and consultants on Aaron's emails to send out RFPs. And sometimes they were from WDC saying, hey, you know, Milwaukee County, take a look at these things. And sometimes it was from the county giving a direct outreach. So there's a big desire to continue that collaboration and not do it purely as competition, because we recognize that there has to be a net gain for the region. If it's just poaching from one to the next, there's no net gain. So there's a desire there.
What's that?
Yeah, you can go keep you.
Okay, sorry.
This is follow up my last question, so I appreciate that you being proactively going out there. And then, do you have a network outside of just locally that, you know, because I think Southbridge is gonna be potentially some way or shape or form, some national gonna come. Is that something that?
Yes, so in the last year, I'm not focused on any ICSC outreach, but that's an example of a place where, you know, it's important to know the national retailers and what they're fishing and what they're looking for. Another is Next City Vanguard. So the Vanguard Network has people working on a lot of different arenas, but typically in more community development investments. And when they're connected to community development investments, they're often more interested in local business support, et cetera. So that's another network that I stay in touch with and I like to tap into as we talk about Southbridge, West Street, that sort of thing. So.
And then as I read your package, I was concerned that we're focusing more on the planning side, but as I talk to you, I understand maybe that's more of your background, and I definitely understand. I feel but my question, I guess, would be is, like, what are your other, not specific, what are your other jobs that you're working on, or you know, projects you're working on? And is there, I don't need to know specifics, I just wonder if there's any way that, like, hey, I'm talking to so-and-so on this project, and hope something came up where maybe it'll be a natural fit that I can pitch this, you know, is there some kind of natural symbiosis?
Yes, and connecting back to what you said earlier, you know, there are certain things that you can discuss specifics about in a public meeting, certain things you can't. So I'm going to generalize that right now I am working with a few major investors on about a 40-acre pad to envision its future. And with that comes public partnerships and private partnerships. So everyone's getting around the table virtually and talking about how to reinvest in this campus. I'm sorry. Okay, so then I'm also working with a couple of developers on a separate 35-acre campus to look at, do we need to encourage the development or the creation of a tax increment district here in order to catalyze change? It has a ton of inherent assets, it shouldn't necessarily be it, but maybe that's going to be what puts it over, you know, and actually gets these developers to sign an agreement. So there is a lot of that for me happening specifically within Milwaukee County. So because it's been so full with activity, I haven't sought to enrich that portfolio outside of Milwaukee County, but I think in this situation that serves me rather well to understand some of those nuances. So I hope that that adds on to the pending experience that we see, which is it's so much easier to submit to municipal staff where open records, you know, are available, right, for request, as opposed to list what exactly I'm working on and then jeopardize potential here.
Yeah, thanks a lot.
Right, do you want to go ahead, please, Sally?
Okay, just a couple of things. I do not see Southbridge as it stands today. Okay, you know, for 50 years, it's been absolutely fantastic. You want a pair of shoes, you can go to Southbridge. Oh, we gotta get that blouse, and you go to another store. It was fantastic because everything was right there. You go have lunch, wow, everything was great. Today's world, no. I can do everything I want right there on my computer. I don't have to go to Southbridge to get the shoes and stores and stuff. So I do not see Southbridge as a destination for quote, you know, that shopping. I do see Southbridge developing into more of a, I don't want to say entertainment, but that idea where you have that mixture that seems to be so popular that you see at South Milwaukee, that you see in Oak Creek and stuff. So that's what I see for that, where you bring things in. The tie-in, and I was very pleased to hear that you said about we are more than Southbridge. We are. And there are things in Greendale, okay, that can be brought in and to help enhance what is at Southbridge. And I hope you take a look at our history, which is, you know, very big. Take that into consideration in the things that are so successful in Greendale can be, you know, brought in and put at Southbridge. One thing that I've never understood that was never pushed was the fact that how close we are to the airport. You go right down Grange Avenue, woo! Okay, I can't tell you how important that is. Yes, the expressway is fantastic, and Greenfield is, playing off of it. We aren't that far from it, okay? And we have the quiet and serenity that Greenfield does not have. Okay, so just things that I'm, in your profession, I'm sure you've already thought of that, but I feel better saying it, so thank you.
Yes, I will just say Pegman and Pete's are not forgotten to me, really other Pete's, and I think if memory serves, even though I couldn't pull it today, the little village next to it and did, is a copy that I have in my car. So I won't forget, it'll be a good work.
Couple things I'd like to bring up, we know we're going around. Let me ask you number one, with what's going on in the world today, and what's going on in marketplaces and stores and everything, how do you see yourself being in this business? You're trying to sell communities on to do this stuff that seems to be closing, people are closed up for now, they can't do a lot of things. And you were in the midst of vendetta, where stores are having to close, and then some of our little stores in the village. And we're asking you to come in and pitch an economic development plan for us, not knowing in a year from now where this whole thing goes. So let me just pick your mind a minute, and why don't you kind of tell me at least where you see this going? Where is this? Are we just the last dog to the tree, or is this really got some future growth on not just Greendale, but in what we're looking for? So if you don't mind.
There's a lot there, so let's see if I can help
Okay.
comprehensively.
Well, that's kind of what I want to ask is you, as the person that we're looking at for this, what is you see all the things we do, and how are you gonna pull this out of the hat? So,
Okay. Oh, I'm gonna try and not be too long-winded. So, networks that are national, like we talked about earlier, they look around the country and they see stories, narratives that are worth being a part of. And so every time as a planner and as a professor in Milwaukee that I've talked to people around the country about this region, if they're at all interested in great historic narratives, they know the Greenfield communities. And then they say, you're so lucky to have one, right? And Greendale, what's happened in Greendale? And so there are some out there who may not know that narrative as well as they could. And so my hope is that by being a part of your team, we can promote the narrative of Greenbelt community, Greendale, to a wide audience. And I'm gonna be sincere. I'm not gonna try to put on a sales hat to you in this. So at the national level, I think that there is attention that can be driven to Greenville and investment that can be driven that isn't today because there's just not a person to call, right? You know, you're busy doing other things, managing the village and taking care of business. So on a regional scale, and by region I'll say 7-county region, there's so much of an advantage in having a planned community with really solid residential opportunity with a strong commercial space. And Southbridge, no matter what everyone's talking about these days, is a strong commercial space and base. And you're adjacent to the freeway. So at the regional scale, you have assets in this community that are attractive, and you just need to be cultivating connections with those that are looking for certain types of amenities that Greendale has. So locally, I would like to get to know your small business community better. I have a lot of ground to gain there. And what I've noticed in working across Milwaukee County in particular, but in Milwaukee, Racine, and Kenosha counties altogether, is that the small business community is looking for outreach from their home community to say, oh, yeah, I've been brainstorming about that, it's been keeping me up at night, and it just so happens you're calling me about this space or this opportunity. I might be able to capitalize on that because now you've helped me build a bridge, right? So at the local level, I think there's a lot that can be done to put pen to paper and ideas to reality for business owners. So I hope that that sounds sincere and not cliche, but Greendale has inherent assets in this region that others don't, that could do read well at the national, regional, and global scales. So my hope would be that I can curate those opportunities, and not alone, it's a team effort, And I know that in the proposal, I had done a little bit including for my team, but we would be a team altogether. And when there is something going well, the credit is to be distributed across the full team, the Greendale team. And when there's something going wrong, or you feel like something's going in the wrong direction, that's when you call me and you say, we need to correct course really fast from this perspective, or from that perspective. And we say, okay, let's talk through it and make sure that we do that, because media will pick up on something and exacerbate it and blow up your whole vision of how you can make Greendale a great place. And they can also align the vision. And so we just need to be responsive in the things that we not be doing as well as you.
Let me just ask you a little bit about this proposal real quickly. So can you explain the proposal, so we go with you, what is that next? What is that mean? Is that timeline? What is that mean?
So Danya and I have had in our backlog, so we have a schedule of hours. We've had our time as proposed, like on a sliding basis. Every week, we slide it a little farther and say, we're gonna be ready to hit the ground running as soon as, if you are willing to work with us. So we're actually ready to go as fast as you would like. And because what I've tried to lay out was based on what I heard, there's a lot of room for tweaking, but the proposal, the letter proposal I gave you is that you can bring us on board, we can work on an hourly basis, so there's a level of effort that will fluctuate from week to week or month to month. And we can report out weekly on our labor efforts, we can report out monthly, and you can say, this is great, but from a financial standpoint, this isn't, right? So the level of effort is gaining traction in this particular project, but we need to figure out how to be right-sizing our time or financials, right? So all that said, we have a reporting potential that can fit whatever you need. And if something doesn't work out and you say, that's nice to try, but we need to do something else, then the letter proposal is that it's in the village's hands if you'd like to say, well, we give it a shot, but this isn't working for us, okay? So I want to plug in and be relevant to you and relevant to the marketplace. So we can start next week.
I love your proposal, first one, and I think you got a lot you can offer us that we haven't gone to me. I'm sold on starting next week, but let's see what happens.
Are we taking an action tonight?
You can, we're open.
Okay, I'd like to make a motion to go ahead. I don't have it for anything.
That's what I'm.
Newspapers are down and go, you can tell them.
I agree with the economic development.
You have a second?
Second.
Any further,
I think we all do.
any further discussion? Without any further discussion, we'll take a roll call for approval.
Trustee Barry?
Aye.
Trustee Owen?
Yes.
This could be embarrassing.
Trustee Maxwell?
Aye.
Trustee Stout?
Aye.
Trustee Chadwick?
Hi.
President Birmingham?
Aye. Welcome aboard. We'll put your hand of our great manager here. Will let us know where we're going from here, and he's, we're here for you. So,
If you ever want a tour of Greendale, I'm
Yes.
happy to give you one.
I can't wait for that. I want this out to word, not the
Okay.
other tours.
Just regarding the billing, and this is just me and that was up to the board, but I think once a month is more than fine.
For billing, but I would say for reporting, and she doesn't know what we do, you guys see the report. We do very, very brief, everybody's, all the department heads said in the meeting, just look like 6, 8 little bullet points. That's it, just give them the highlights of.
Don't give us too much.
I know you are,
Don't give us too much.
Jason, I know you are monthly.
Okay.
Next week.
Once a month filming. Well, and we'll let these guys work on that. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
We look forward to you coming on board.
All right, thank you all.
I'll turn that on.
All right, Lou.
What do you need? Oh, we need the motion to close session.
We're gonna move now to go to closed session. Village Board convene in closed session pursuant to section 19.851C to consider employment, promotion, compensation for performance evaluation data of a public employee over which the government body has jurisdiction and exercises responsibility. Specifically discuss the village manager's goals and objectives in the first quarter. Board will not come back into open session. I'll take a motion.
Motion moving closed session, not on the president.
Second motion?
Let's take a roll call, please.
Trustee Olet.
Aye.
Trustee Sabrowski.
Aye.
Trustee McFall.
Aye.
Trustee Stout.
Yes.
Trustee Chadwick.
Aye.
President Remington.
Aye.
Trustee Bergen.
All right, why don't we check this off and go right into it?